Reform UK have pledged to hold a referendum on net zero policies. The only thing is, of course, they'd have to be empowered to be able to do that. But will that pressure other parties to offer that? To talk about this in more detail, I'm joined by author Ross Clark. He says that green policies are not just a threat to our economy, they're a threat to our national security. Good morning to you, Ross.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, you know, I'm a huge fan of your book, Not Zero. You've updated it, and it's now Not Zero, How an Irrational Target Will Impoverish You, Help China, and Won't Even Save the Planet. And it won't, of course. But helping China is not just economically. There are some very big issues with net zero that not just affect us, you know, in terms of making our country poorer, they also impact our ability to secure our country.
Well, yes, I mean, the point I made in the book was also made by Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho a couple of days ago, who said that, well, she's speaking specifically about Labour's policy of decarbonising the grid by 2030, and said quite rightly that it would make us hugely reliant on China for the cables, the electric panels, the solar panels, the other infrastructure that would be needed to get anywhere near that target. And she's quite right about that, because we are already losing huge amounts of our manufacturing industry to China, and not least because energy prices are so high in Britain. If you're trying to manufacture things in Britain, you're already paying 4 or 5 times as much for your electricity and gas as you would in the US, for example. And
what a surprise!
China's energy, the result of green energy policy.
Indeed, China's energy costs, of course, although they are, everyone, I love it when the Greens come on and tell me, but they're building, you know, they've got the most solar panels, the most wind turbines and that. Yes, they're also building coal-fired power stations, which they're getting cheap energy. But it's interesting, the Energy Secretary, Claire Coutinho, who's I've got a lot of time for, however, rubbishing Labour's policy. Oh, you can't possibly decarbonise the electricity grid. By the way, only 20% of our energy, not 100% of it, by 2030. What absurd idea that is. But the Conservatives are still pledged to decarbonise by 2035. That's equally absurd, isn't it?
Well, exactly. Why Claire Coutinho thinks it'll be much different with the Tories' policy of decarbonising the grid by 2035, I can't work out, because she seems to be sort of relying on some massive technological breakthrough between 2030 and 2035, or some massive turnaround for the UK manufacturing industry, which would allow us to undercut China and so on. But I just can't see where that's going to come from. I mean, 2035 gives us extra 5 years breathing space, but still means we would run up against this cliff edge of where we're lumbering manufacturing industry with all these extra costs, and China isn't, because, as you say, China, as well as building a lot of renewable energy, is also building new coal plants. They have made an absolute priority, as has the US, by the way, of national energy security. And that's what we are lacking in Britain still, even though it's in Claire Coutinho's title. She is the Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero. But
well, as I've
more
always
about the latter than the former.
As I've always said to the Secretary of State with that job title, it's one or the other. It's not both. It's an or, not an and. But this is a crucial thing. America, look, they talk a good game. Joe Biden talks a good game on all of these green policies, but actually they are very energy secure, huge exporter of oil and gas as well. And so even when we've been facing these battles in Europe with getting liquefied natural gas to replace Russia's gas, oh, no problem. America's been making a fortune selling it to us. But this is the thing, isn't it? We're almost getting to be like alone in the world, continuing to push these policies against the actual reality. And we're doing so at a time when people are poorer, people need energy that is affordable for every aspect of our lives, massive impact on the cost of living, as we know, since the Ukraine war, but also for security. We are facing the threat from Russia, from what's going on in the Middle East, from China as well, whether it's on Taiwan or whether it's cyber threats and others. We are not in a position where we can secure our borders, secure our ability to be self-sufficient in the event of some devastating impact of war. It's almost like we're sleepwalking into this. We're not even going to be able to manufacture our own steel in a few years' time.
Yeah, well, it's only, I mean, Joe Biden is seen as the good guy, isn't he? Because he passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which bungs loads of, subsidies and so on at US companies and consumers, so long that is they buy American-made electric cars and other goods. But, you look at US energy policy and their absolute priority of energy security, they've increased their gas and oil output has never been higher. They're still using coal. And, thank God they have increased their gas output because through shale gas, it has to be said, because that's what we are importing now in place of Russian gas. We used to import a lot of gas that's piped through the European supply, which ultimately came from Russia. We replaced that with gas imported by ship from the US and from Qatar. And if it wasn't for the US's energy policy, we really would be in problem now because, we've sort of allowed our own fossil fuel industries and North Sea to run them down a bit. We've refused to exploit our own shale gas reserves, which could be producing large quantities of energy for us now. And we've ended up reliant on the US instead of
I know
Russia now.
it is
So
extraordinary, and yet then they say, "Oh, we'll criticise Labour," when the Tories are doing exactly the same. Ross Clark, always such a pleasure. Thank you very much. I mean, again, we're doing a lot of this on the show today, talking facts.